Their purpose, the dissolution of the Russian Federation, and the target is the Heartland. But I want to translate the quote by Zbigniew Brzezinski. Russia can be either an empire or a democracy, but then it cannot be two. It cannot be both. Without Ukraine, Russia will stop being an empire, but with Ukraine bought and paid for, taken away from Russia and under control, Russia becomes automatically an empire. That's what he says. But let's go into the article and see what's going on. The purpose is the dissolution of the Russian Federation. Target is the Heartland. The US government plans to dissolve Russia in the name of decolonization. What is behind this strange anti-Russian obsession of the United States government? Is there anything that the US European globalists will not risk in pursuing the end of Russia? There is an element within the US government, and I believe the author says it is the dominant element that will do literally anything to get the US NATO into an all-out war with Russia. When the leaders of Ukraine and Russia appeared ready to sit down and discuss their differences in April 2020, shortly after the Russian invasion, former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson was sent to Kiev to undermine the idea of a negotiated peace. So they wanted the conflict. Ukraine is at the core of a wider anti-Russian obsession of the neoconservative Uniparty that resides in Washington but straddles London, Brussels, Paris, and Berlin. And as seen through the eyes of these globalists, modern Ukraine is about to fulfill its long-awaited mission. It was designed for this moment to act as a wedge between East and West, and it's uniquely qualified to draw the world into a global conflagration and to ignite it. The end game of these Western globalists is nothing less than regime change in Kremlin and the disintegration of Russia, a 1,000-year-old nation, into a collection of separate states. Ben Norton writes in the Monthly Review, after the fall of the USSR, neoconservative agent and later Vice President Dick Cheney wanted to break up Russia into many smaller countries. Former U.S. National Security Advisor Zbigniew Brzezinski even published an article in the elite journal Foreign Affairs in 1997, proposing the creation of a minimally confederate Russia consisting of a European Russia, a Republic of Siberia, and the Republic of the Far East. Let's remember, Russia is the biggest country in the world. There was also a virtual congressional hearing broadcast live on YouTube a year ago, June 23, 2022, in which a group called the Helsinki Commission openly discussed balkanization of the decolonization of Russia. Decolonization of Russia, an ethical and strategic imperative. Decolonization of the abolition is the abolition of colonization. Decolonization scholars form the school of thought known as decolonization, and aptly decolonial frameworks to struggles against the colonialism of power and the colonialism of knowledge within colonial states, even after successful independent movements. Does this remind you of Newland, Piatt, and the various color revolutions? Yes, it's exactly what the sensitivity of the neo-pile hawks of the US means. And since at least the end of the Second World War, these warmongering globalists have taken control of the US State Department, the Defense Department, and every federal agency that has anything to do with the US foreign policy, intelligence gathering, finance, and law enforcement. President John F. Kennedy tried to go against their wishes, pursuing a more peace-centered foreign policy. He wanted to start by closing down the CIA. Kennedy paid for it with his life. For the neophile hawks of the USA, as we have baptized them, we read indicatively Now, this Kabbalistic spiral is often referred to by its political opponents as neoliberal, neoconservative, but what makes them unique is their thirst for conflict. The definition related to blood is very important, and not only what it says from the battlefields they construct. In general, the blood stain, quote unquote, that you know very well whom it characterizes, and their determination to create a global one world system based on the fusion of certain aspects of communism and fascism, and this, of course, is a feature of the suspects themselves. The difference between this and the former evil empires is that this one would have the ability to track everyone in real time with the help of today's advanced technology. They're closely related to the military-industrial complex that President Eisenhower warned about in his farewell address. They are also linked to secret societies that President John F. Kennedy warned about before he was assassinated. Their closest external ally is the United Kingdom, but the whole movement is Eurocentric, with their main think tanks being US-based Council on Foreign Relations and the UK-based Royal Institute of International Affairs and the Tripartite Commission, among others. But no matter what you call them or how you describe them, here's what every American should know, that they will stop at literally nothing to incite a war, because out of chaos they plan to build their new world order. And if you think about it, there is no greater example of chaos than World War III. These are the same people who got us involved in Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, Somalia, etc. These machinations were bad enough, but now they're conspiring to get us into a world war with another nuclear power, Russia, that would have a hellish outcome for all nations involved for years to come. They may think they can limit the war to a few tactical nuclear weapons or exploding dirty bombs, nothing like a massive ICBM, but that's a mess. As soon as the first bomb goes off, no matter where, we enter an uncontrollable situation where anything can happen. These warmongering neocons, neoliberal interests make up the Uniparty. Uniparty is a term describing the globalist establishment's control over politics and policy, to the extent that every or nearly every major political party or politician is controlled by them, and thus they have much more in common than different politically. And it's essentially synonymous with the deep state, as it maintains control almost regardless of which political party or politician is elected. In Washington, which means they control not only the White House, but the two houses of Congress, including the majority of politicians from both major parties. Two of their main fellows in the U.S. Senate are Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina, and Richard Blumenthal, Democrat of Connecticut. These two senators called a press conference on June 22nd that sent a chilling message. Remember Graham's speech when he visited Zelensky, where he said, "And the Reds are dying. It's by far the best financial waste we have ever made. Thank you very much," we wrote them there. Russia has its own problems, and I am by no means suggesting that they have pristine values in the current situation in Eastern Europe, but there is nothing that Russia has done that would in any way, shape, or form justify World War III or the use of nuclear weapons. Yet that's exactly what the US government seems willing to provoke. We are on the threshold of an unprecedented scenario that, if it continues on its current course to its logical conclusion, will end badly. And I worry that it could end very badly for the nation that claims "In God We Trust," but has not acted in a manner worthy of the slogan for many, many decades now. World War III, unfortunately, does not bode well for the people of any nation on earth, but right now there is a group of very powerful, very wealthy elite who believe that such a destructive war would benefit them. We know that the primary goal of these Luciferian elites is to implement a digital identity for all people from birth. See Sustainable Development Goals of the UN 2030 Agenda, linked to a global digital currency. They also want far fewer people on Earth because a smaller population would be more conducive to a centrally planned, top-down, global dictatorship where all humans are digitally controlled and monitored in everything they do, almost like cyborgs. I've previously quoted Klaus Schwab, Yuval Noah Harari, Dennis Meadows, King Charles, and other globalist depopulation freaks many times who tell us that this is the kind of future they envision. I'm not going to reproduce their quotes in this article, but I encourage you new readers to go through the archives and read them. The purpose of this article is simply to alert readers and awaken them to the very real possibility of World War III, and that such a war could easily escalate into a nuclear showdown with Russia. Why do politicians in Washington want this? I cannot answer this question, but I do know that the push against the Great Reset and a fully digitalized world is starting to gain momentum. Last week, Alabama became the third state, following Florida and Indiana, to pass legislation that claims to ban any digital currency from being legal tender within its jurisdiction. The nation of Slovakia adopted a constitution amendment earlier this month that was supposed to guarantee that citizens always have the right to make purchases with cash. I'm not sure how effective these laws will be, but no one can deny that people are waking up and pushing their politicians to protect cash and prevent the creation of a truly cashless society. Many people, especially devout Christians, will also be hesitant to accept any kind of digital identity. It was stated at the February 2023 World Government Summit that in order for people to keep up with the massive changes planned for the new digital world order, some sort of shock, quote-unquote, would have to be administered to the system. Professor Arturo Briz, director of the IMD World Competitiveness Center, and Dr. Samir Saran, president of the Observer Research Foundation, asked the question, how will the world order change this decade, and what will it be like in 10 years? Bryce said he believes a shock is needed to shift the current international framework away from the current world order and into a new one, and this transformation of the world order cannot be gradual. I absolutely agree with the world order that the world order, as it is currently constructed, makes no sense at all, Bryce said. This is not in line with economic powerhouses like India, Brazil, or Germany. They do not have a huge role in the international order, but for me the big question is how we go about this transformation. It cannot be gradual. It must be driven by a certain shock that will happen. Apparently the powers that be have decided that much more bloodshed will be needed. Why else would they push so hard for war between two nations armed to the teeth with nuclear weapons? And this I've translated for you from a Greek article. Please leave your comments. Thank you for your support. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.